have this strange tendency to not really sympathize with people or to validate.
All right, first off, I want to say that I really love this creator. I have followed him for a while, and seriously, I agree with almost everything he says. But this one I had to speak up on. So basically, what he's saying is that when somebody's going through something, we have two options, right? Actually, we have quite a few options. We can tell them that they're crazy and that they shouldn't be feeling the way they're feeling. Or number two is we can hold that space, but we don't quite drop down to that vibration that they're suffering at, right? So they come to you and they're like, I'm suffering from this. And you say, I understand, like, I know that's hard, but everything's going to be okay. So that's kind of what I'm hearing in this message in this TikTok of, the advice that he's telling people to have. He says that he sometimes doesn't have a lot of, did he say empathy? I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. For people when they're going through things, because he knows that they're exactly where they're supposed to be and that everything will be okay, which is true. It is true. And the third option is where you actually drop down to their level and you feel it with them, right? So you are dropping down to their vibration, whatever level of energy, whatever emotion is down here, you're dropping down and you're feeling it with them. And this creator suggests that maybe that's harmful to go down there with them and feel that because you're not holding a space for them to rise up to. And this is where I massively disagree. Okay, so let me tell you where I come from. I'm a somato-emotional release specialist. So I work with people every single day, hundreds, thousands of people. I've sat with their emotions. And what happens when people are starting to go into, we find something, right? I call it an imprint on their body. You can feel it buzzing, you can feel heat. And we drop into this rhythm where they go into this deep hypnotic state. And when we start talking to them, they can actually go talk to their inner child or whatever is there, okay? So you can literally feel their body drop in vibration. I'm there with them. I'm usually in this really beautiful hypnotic state with them. And then as they talk to these parts of our body, they talk to the inner child. And if they feel safe enough, if the protective parts have stepped back, then they will actually release the emotion. And it's a very physical thing. When they release it, my body heats up. I sweat. Like I can feel it leave their body, and this is the process that I followed over and over in the past few years. And my life is drastically different. There is value in going back and finding those emotions and finding that pain. It's ancestral trauma. It's the trauma we carry around in our body. We have to feel it. The creator isn't suggesting that we don't do that, but he is suggesting that if you are the person observing, right, that you don't go down to that space with them. And this is where I disagree. Because as a practitioner, one thing I've noticed is that the more that I experience, the more pain that I find in my body and help it to release, the more times I've visited that inner child and visited my shadow parts, that I tend to attract clients right afterwards that have gone through the same thing. And I think the reason is that it's a part of me that's resolved, right? If we attract people based on our trauma and like it's still in pain, we're going to attract people that are going to help you try to heal it. But after we've started to heal it, and there's going to be different aspects of it, but after we start that, you're in a whole different vibration. Your mid-level is higher. And it sends out this vibration to the universe like, hey, I've been through this. I have empathy for this, right? It's not a pain spot anymore, but I do have empathy for it. And like, if I process shame, I will attract somebody that needs to process that same shame. If I, start going and processing something around like my core belief of who I am, I'll attract someone right after that needs that same therapy. And I remember this one experience because I was holding space for this girl, and it was actually something that I had never gone through, and nothing was moving. So this is so key. Nothing was moving, and I'm like, working around it. Let's talk to the part. Let's imagine it. We're gonna just try to talk the protective parts. Nothing was shifting, until I tried to imagine what that would feel like in a different way, but kind of similar, right? What would that feel like if my child felt like that? And I felt myself give real empathy. Like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine how hard that was. It didn't take from me. I just felt myself drop into that emotion with her. Not so much that I'm like feeling it myself, like crying, right? But it's more, oh yeah, I remember how hard that was. And I've noticed this scenario over and over with clients. The minute I can drop down into that actual energetic space with them, that's when they feel safe to release this really deep pain. and you can feel it in your body, right? Like, test this out today. You don't have to believe me. Test it out. Like, someone comes to you with something, and I want you to give that response. Like, I'm really sorry that you're going through this, but let me give you advice. Feel, or maybe like have someone do that to you. I want you to feel it in your body. What happens in here? And I bet you're going to find out that your body does this. Okay. Your body doesn't feel safe. Your body doesn't feel protected. It doesn't feel seen because that person, even though they have good intentions, they are invalidating your pain by not holding space for it to be very valid, even though it's true, like all these things can resolve and you are going to be okay, or maybe you're not. Maybe you're not going to be okay, and that's okay too. I think what the creator is talking about is this radical acceptance of this emotion in the middle, which is very true. And it's actually an important part of learning how to handle our emotions, right? It's like seeing them, it's like a formula. Like, oh, I'm like, 60% depressed, or I'm 20% irritated today. Like you step into this middle point and there's a formula. Like acceptance in the middle is so much power. That's true. But the biggest thing I found in other massage therapists, other practitioners, is that when they are unable to hold space for someone, when they haven't processed their own emotions, when they haven't done their own work, they get uncomfortable when other people cry. And so I'm questioning whether this is occurring in some of the people that are commenting here, maybe the creator, that if you can't hold space for people, maybe it's not you haven't processed your own emotions around it. I find that happens with me, and so I would just highly recommend that you go and search inside, feel how your body responds to people. Is it tightening when they're talking about a certain pain? Because that's an indication that that's something that you need to process. Now, there is an exception here. So, you're using these clues as an indication of what is happening in your own body. Now, if your sacral chakra is blocked, if you have receiving blocks, and you tend to like overgive, or you don't give from a truly like open space because you just can't have empathy for yourself, in those cases, listening to people's problems is going to draw from you. And so it's this balance, right? Of you taking care of yourself first and then making sure you have that space to be open for other people. So I feel like maybe there is some truth in what, everybody's feeling in these comments. Like, yeah, when people do say that, like, I do feel like it draws from me. Yeah, it can if you're not if it's triggering, number one of your own traumas and you haven't visited it or, healed it, or number two, if you don't have the space to hear people. If you listen to Frederick Dodson, his book, Levels of Energy, he talks about one of the key elements of a really good, true practitioner / therapist is someone who can hold a true vibrational space for somebody, right? And honestly, that matters more than what people say. So, we can't all be therapists, but I would just see, just use it as like a clue. Hey, this drained me. This was triggering to me. Ask yourself why, because I would argue that it doesn't mean that the actual act of having empathetic space in the same vibration is the cause. I would argue that it was more based on your own traumas and your ability to hold space.